Welp, it's finally time. We're both big fans of the games, and we've been avoiding this one for years. But the day has finally come for us to discuss the original Resident Evil movie. So join us as we step into the world of Paul W.S. Anderson. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tim.
Today all my dreams come true.
Okay, this is a horror movie podcast. Was that a quote from the movie that I'm forgetting?
Wasn't it like, I might have said it wrong, but like that's like the thing where she wakes up on her little notepad. It says something like that.
Oh, it says today all your... Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, fair
Something
enough.
along those lines.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
It's that classic Resident Evil line.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, everyone. It's a horror movie podcast. We get together, talk about a movie. And today, we unfortunately have to start the Resident Evil franchise with the original Resident Evil movie from 2002. This was always going to be something that we'd get to eventually, probably when they've got a new Resident Evil movie like coming out. But I had a goal on my birthday stream on Twitch that if we hit a certain amount, we'd start it this summer. So here we are, as promised, Resident Evil. And of course, this is notable because we're both fans of the games. We're big fans of the games. We're very opinionated on the games. So we're probably going to have a lot of strong opinions about these movies. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, so we're going to get into the first one today. We'll start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do, and we'll give you warning before we get to spoilers. Before we get started, I'll just remind you, if you are enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch, and you get some bonus stuff, including a bonus episode every month over on Patreon, but I'll tell you more about that at the end. So, yeah, right, so just to paint a picture, right?
Sure.
To paint a picture.
Picasso.
This came out in 2002. Which is the same year, at least in the West. I think Japan got it in 2001, but in the West, this is the year that we got Resident Evil Remake, the video game on GameCube.
Wow.
I know, it's insane to think about that now. But, so, Resident Evil 1 came out in 1996 on the PlayStation, and indeed the Saturn, and possibly PC. Resident Evil 2 came out in 1998. Nemesis came out in 1999. Code Veronica came out in 2000. And then in Japan, Remake came out in 2001, but we got it in 2002. And then I think Zero was like the year after that. So, right.
Well, I remember that was like a big deal too, like when they announced that like Resident Evil was going to be a Nintendo exclusive. Like that was like very surprising.
That was the only reason why I got a GameCube instead of a PS2. I did eventually get a PS2, but the Slim was out like much later. But like I went GameCube just purely because I cared about Resident Evil.
Sure, you got me.
So, I think that just to paint the picture that I bought a system at the time. Well, I got a system for Christmas because I was a kid. Because of Resident Evil, because it was my favorite game series. So I just want that to be clear going into this. I really care about these games. I still play them to this day. I get them all pretty much day one. There was a rough period, the 2010s, was a bit rough, especially early on with 6, and it's seeming like they'd never go back to sort of more classic style and whatnot. But we're not here to talk about the games. I'm painting just a picture, just a nice a mural on the wall of the saga of our time with Resident Evil.
That reminds me, we still have to finish 6.
Yeah, but you've got 2 kids. You don't have time for streaming Resident Evil 6, Tim. No one blames you for that. They'll probably blame me for it somehow. We should just play it single player then with the AI. No, I will do it properly with Tim when his kids are off to college, okay? That is how this is going to happen.
Trying to replace me with AI, come on.
We will play that on the PlayStation 8 when Tim's kids are away. So that's what's happening. I don't know. We'll like at some point we'll talk about it when Tim's got time to squeeze it in. We have one last Resident Evil 6 campaign to play on Twitch. Anyway, Resident Evil the movies, spearheaded by auteur Paul W.S. Anderson, the mastermind that gave us Alien vs Predator, Mortal Kombat, Event Horizon, which is highly overrated, might I add. That movie is not good. He did. What was that movie? He did another game movie in like 2020. Was it Monster Hunter? Yeah. I fell asleep during that. It was so boring.
I tried watching. I didn't finish it.
Yeah. No. Luckily, not a horror movie, so we don't have to ever worry about sullying our eyeballs with it on here. But
as you say, you brought up AVP. That was one of the things that really sucked this week. Was I've been doing like rewatch of all the Alien movies leading up to the new one. But I had gotten around to the time where I was like, I guess I'll do AVP. So I actually had to watch 2 Paul W.S. Anderson movies this week. And has not made me happy.
I mean, the only solace I can give you, Tim, is that when you watch AVP Requiem, you'll be begging for AVP 1.
That's true. Yeah.
That's the only solace I can give you.
Can't argue that. Like, at least I can see this movie.
Yeah, the sad part is that, like, AVP... Well, Mortal Kombat's probably his best movie. Right.
I mean, like, it's not a good movie, but, like, it's dumb enough that it's fun.
It's definitely the one I have the most fun with. It's the one. It's like one of the only ones that I have entertainment value in. But sadly, after that, I feel like AVP probably is his next most fun movie, and I don't like AVP particularly, but it's I don't maybe arguably this movie even, because I mean that's the next sad statement is before we even get to our initial thoughts on this. This is probably the best of the 6 Resident Evil movies that he's attached to. And, it's a low bar, but it probably is the best one because they just get dumber. They get just more convoluted and nonsensical. We're in for quite a ride over the next however many months it takes us to get through all these.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've seen all of them. I definitely know I've probably seen most of them, but there might have been 1 or 2 that I missed. It's so hard to tell because I couldn't tell you which one is which after this. Like, so I think one was called Afterlife. I'm sure. Was there one that was like Extinction?
That's also correct. Yes.
Okay. Was there one that was like Apocalypse or?
Yep.
Was it just Apocalypse or is it something like Apocalypse something?
Just Apocalypse. No.
Okay. At least I know some of the subtitles. I could not tell you which one is which, like what order they're supposed to be in.
I can, and I have seen them all. I hadn't seen the last 2. However, about 3 or 4 years ago now, it's been a little while, my audience loves to torture me with these movies because they made me watch them on stream a number of years ago, so I actually have seen them all. And I probably can. Like, after this is Apocalypse, then Extinction, then Afterlife. I think the 5th one's Retribution, I want to say.
Okay.
And then the last one's easy because it's called The Final Chapter. So
there you go.
But it's dear. Okay, so Resident Evil from 2002. It's about Alice. Oh, we're going to talk about Alice. There's going to be so much to say, especially as we go into the sequels. But so it's basically about an underground lab where a zombie outbreak, a virus escapes that turns people into zombies, and a secret military team working for Umbrella, the corporation that is behind everything in the Resident Evil universe, is sent down to investigate what happened. And that's the basic premise of the movie, which what I just said there doesn't sound terrible as a Resident Evil movie adaptation. It's not like I think the lab should be a surprise in the 3rd act. I don't think the lab should be something that we're getting to immediately, but like that could be a change that they could make where I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I can get on board with that as long as everything else feels right. But well, Tim.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know how, like, sometimes when I ask you this question, you go on for a long time. Just keep in mind, we're probably going to talk for at least another 90 minutes about this movie, so you don't have to blow your whole load here.
Sure.
But general feelings on the first Resident Evil movie.
So I'm not sure how many times I've seen this. Like, this might be my...
Too many.
Maybe like... definitely too many. Maybe like my 3rd or 4th time, which, again, why am I watching it so much if it's a movie I don't really enjoy? But I feel like...
Actually, Tim, we at least once have watched it together because we...
Yes.
like 6 years ago, did a commentary track for this movie on Patreon.
That's why I was like, we have talked about this before, right?
Yeah.
Right, so that makes sense. And I must have seen it once when it came out, and then probably like once or twice I might have just randomly put it on streaming to be like, all right, this sucks, but let me go through the movies and so I can at least complain about them or whatever. And then we'll usually give up on that. Watching it this time, I was trying to see if it'd be possible to kind of divorce it from like a fan perspective, because obviously, like you said, we're very big fans, and so there's a thing where it's like, okay, am I not liking this because it's not like the game? Like if I try to put the game out of my senses, like would I still enjoy it as a movie? But I think the very clear answer is no. I think it's a very bad movie. I think it looks horrible. There's a lot of really bad CGI. I mean, I don't remember if this was considered good at the time, but it looks horrible now. There's like I think the big problem is it is trying really hard to be like flashy and cool and slick. Which, and it definitely does feel like it has an early 2000s aesthetic to it, which I don't think has aged well at all. It just does not look right to me. So yeah, I just find very little to enjoy about it. And when it comes to adapting stuff that I love, I'm not like die hard like, no, the characters must look exactly how they look in the game, and they must say the exact lines, and the story must do the exact things. Like, if anything, I do think it is good to change things, because otherwise it's boring to just watch the same exact thing in a different format. I probably talked about this before, but I actually think the Hellboy movies are like kind of a perfect example of how to adapt something, because the first GDT movies, like they're really not following the story at all. Like they use it for inspiration. But I'm
unfamiliar with this time zone. Where's GDT time exactly?
I'm talking about the man Guillermo del Toro, of course. But I think he does a really good job of capturing the spirit of the comics and the characters and the look, but crafting his own story and stuff, which is why I think those movies work so well, and why the 2019 movie, while I do find it kind of entertaining in a very dumb, bad, cheesy way, I don't think it really works as a movie, and that was trying to be much more faithful to the actual story and stuff, and it just doesn't work. So
wait, you're talking about Welcome to Raccoon City?
No, I'm still talking about Hellboy now. Sorry.
Oh, Hellboy. Okay.
Yeah, so the 2019 Hellboy movie, it's actually much more like story-wise, it's much more accurate to the comics, but the movie is like that much worse. So I do think it is. There is something to be said when you're adapting something that you want to change it and rework it in the format, but what you want to try to do is keep the spirit and the essence of like the work and the characters and stuff, and this just does none of that. Like, yeah, it doesn't feel like it's trying to be creepy or ominous. There's no sense of like exploring or anything,
solving puzzles.
Yeah. and obviously, like, again, it's not like I need the characters to look and say the exact same lines and stuff, but it would be nice if it was the actual characters in the movie. Like, it's such a bizarre choice to me to just completely have like all these characters made up. I mean, I know they try to incorporate like the video game characters later in the series, but I don't think there's any characters that were like from the game in this, unless I don't know if I'm forgetting like something.
No, I don't think anyone in this movie is. Well, I mean, I suppose there's one technicality and spoilers that we could say, but like, not really.
And then and then I'll just say like there was a part of this where I feel like I always get tricked into this like early on when she first wakes up and she's kind of like exploring the secluded mansion. It's not like I'm saying like, oh my god, this is like a masterpiece, but I always go like, oh, okay, this is like giving me more of what I would expect a Resident Evil movie to be. Like, it's very quiet. She's kind of looking at, she's in like this fancy mansion, but it's like all dilapidated, and it is seeming like it's trying to go for more of like a somber kind of creepy, quiet vibe. But then it's just like, after a minute, they just like totally throw that all out the window and like, nope. It's just, yeah. I mean, I'll just leave it there, because obviously we're gonna get really into it. But yeah, I hate this movie. I don't think there's anything redeeming about it. I know that like it does have its fans. Obviously, like they made 6 movies, so it must have done somewhat well. And I think there are people that are like, yeah, well, it's not like the game, but like if you don't think of it like that, it's still a good movie. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like this is not good at all.
Yeah, it's like I even think I'll be as harsh and say I hate it and it has no redeeming qualities, but yeah, I don't like it. It's not good. It's mediocre at best. It has like, even if I divorce it from the game and I just think of like, okay, do I care about any of these characters? I don't. And this is a track record that Paul W.S. Anderson has, is that I think all of his characters in all of his movies suck. It's one of the reasons why I don't like Event Horizon. I hate all those characters. I don't like watching them. I do think he has this flashy editing style that feels kind of like he was trying to do a music video at times, but not in a way
that's a good way. Yeah,
it accents what's happening, because like Edgar Wright kind of does that as well, but he always does it to sort of accent the comedy that he's doing.
Sure.
And say something like Hot Fuzz, where he'll do like these quick cuts to kind of transition, but this will do it in the middle of scenes that just to try and make them more exciting, and there's kind of a difference there, and I don't think it does make anything more exciting. So there's that. I mean, the one thing I will say is that at least being from this time period, it is shot on film. So while I agree I don't like the style either, it does at least have like a raw film look, as opposed to
that's fair. Yeah.
something from these days which is all shot digitally for the most part. So I'll give it that.
It's not just like big green screens and stuff.
Yeah. There's some practical stuff. There's actual sets. There's a reasonable amount of that kind of thing, because we're still kind of in the era of that happening, and it unfortunately also means we're in kind of the early days of CG where that's a bit more rough, admittedly. But even today, though, CG is a bit of a crapshoot depending on how much time and effort they put into it. Because a lot of modern Marvel movies look like shit, right? And then you see a Planet of the Apes or an Avatar, and you're like, oh crap, this is what you can do when you actually give them time and money to actually work on this stuff. So, but anyway, I think big things for me is that I don't really like the characters. I think it is weird to not use any characters from the games. I think it's weird that it's such a group dynamic the entire time, when the games have always been like 1 or 2 people. Like, I get why you want at least 2 people, because you want to have them interact with each other and whatnot. But to me, a big part of the games is like finding the other members of the team that were supposed to be there, and like how they met their demise and things like that. Also, a big part of this movie revolves around the fact that the underground lab, the Hive, has like an artificial intelligence that runs it, and this is just nothing from the games. This is a complete thing they've just added in here. So, if I'm looking at a movie and you're not going to do a straight adaptation, which in some ways I would prefer, obviously you can have your own flourishes, because a part of adapting it is understanding that certain things that make it work in the context of an interactive video game won't translate if you just do them 1-to-1 in a movie. So, same way you adapt from a book to a movie, is that, in the book you're hearing the character's narration the whole time, which gives you a lot of insight into what they're thinking. You don't have that in a movie, so you have to make it more visual. You have to make it clear to the audience just through what the actor's doing, unless you go the route of just having narration. But most movies won't do that, because it's kind of it's overbearing. It can be lazy in the certain context. Obviously there's times where narration works, but not constantly all the time, right? So same with the video games. Like, some things would have to change to make it work in a movie. Yes,
I'm just imagining like Jill in her head just being like, I was almost a Jill sandwich.
So you've got that, and I always remember like the extras on the DVD of the first movie, because I definitely have seen it more times than you have, just purely because back in 2002 I think I tried to watch it a bunch to convince myself it was good, because I needed it to be good and was frustrated that it wasn't. But I remember in the extras him saying, when we were writing the script, we thought, we don't want to use any of the characters from the games, because if we use the characters from the games, then the audience will know who's going to make it. And I'm like, dude, people have been adapting books for a century, and no one has ever been concerned with the fact that some of the audience have read the book and know how it's going to end. That's not a big deal. You're just changing things for changing things' sake. Obviously, the whole idea that he creates this character of Alice and she's called Alice because she's gone into Wonderland. Oh, the most original like narrative idea anyone's ever
Whoa, you're blowing my mind.
But forgetting the fact that he ends up marrying the actress that plays Alice, Milla Jovovich, and she then becomes the star of this entire series. And that when video game characters do show up in the sequels because people complained they weren't there, they just show up to show how good Alice is. They have to be saved by Alice constantly. They just look in awe as Alice comes swooping into the scene to save them. Like, that's what this series becomes. Alice basically becomes a superhero, which, at least in this movie, she's not a superhero. She's just, you know, whatever. But, like, still. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I forget how the story goes, but I seem to recall that each one just kind of gets crazier and crazier. And then, yeah, it basically feels like she's just like some kind of crazy like super monster like by the end of like can like, you know, do anything.
Oh yeah, she has like superpowers and shit. Like by the time you get later on in the thing. So yeah, like that bugs me. I think there's a lot of little choices that bug me in this as well, but mostly it's down to like just how shallow the script is, how shallow the direction is. Yeah, just simple things like what I want them to adapt from the game is, you know, the atmosphere. It's also the kind of the core like ideas and mechanics of what makes Resident Evil. And one of those things is that, you know, in the game, in Resident Evil 1, like part of that is slowly discovering what happened here, and like you get like notes and things that kind of build this picture of over time, which is that, oh, something like deteriorated in this lab and like it was very nefarious. But when you see this lab at the start of this movie, even though obviously, yes, Umbrella are doing like illegal experiments on genetics and making like viruses and monsters and whatnot, it just looks like a sort of workplace where everyone's at an office and everyone seems like they're just having a normal day. And when you read
like one of the first lines is like a guy spilling coffee on himself and going like, "Hey man."
Yeah, but like in the game, when you build up the backstory, it sounds like, oh, they started to notice that things were weird. That, like, you know, a scientist would just go missing one day, and like it was kind of tense, and like, there was this paranoia that started to build as, oh, maybe there's been an accident in like sub basement 3 of the lab or something. Like they build this idea over time, or that this happened over time. Here it kind of feels like, I don't know, like, oh, the computer did it. I don't know.
It's so dumb. It just feels like, I mean, I don't think this is the case. I mean, maybe I could be wrong, but it just feels like one of those cases of like they just had a completely different script and someone was like, oh, let's just slap Resident Evil on it and we can turn it into that. Because it's like, yeah, like everything you're saying, like, yeah, the artificial intelligence and, you know, all the focus on the lab stuff, it doesn't feel like Resident Evil to me. And I don't know if you agree, but when I think about the first game, like the majority of it, to me is I think about the mansion. Like,
yeah,
to me, it's so central to the game. It's like a haunted house. Like you're exploring, you know, this creepy mansion, and then yeah, obviously you go into the lab stuff eventually, but the mansion stuff is the stuff that's so prominent and important to me, and so much of the horror comes from that like eerie, creepy feeling of like, exploring it, and it really pisses me off that one, like you said, they just start off in the lab right away, which, you know, it just feels like you're giving all of this stuff away, and then two, just the fact that yeah, there's almost no mansion in it. It's just like a little sliver in the beginning, and then it's like they're immediately off to like all the underground and the lab stuff, and it just really bugs me.
Yeah, there's just no sense of discovery. Like a big thing in the game is that you're constantly discovering things, and when you discover an entrance to a lab underground really late in the game, you're like, oh shit, like this makes sense that this was here because this is where all these things have came from. Like yeah, this makes a whole lot of sense. But because, yeah, like you say, you start in the lab while everyone's still alive, and we see what happens to them, it just kind of like, you know, it's kind of like an Aliens, right? And Paul W.S. Anderson is guilty of trying to like do his own version of Aliens over and over again. Like a lot of his movies can be compared to it.
I can see that. Yeah.
With him trying to build an ensemble of badasses that are getting into like a situation where something's went wrong, yada yada. So he's effectively doing that, right? And in Aliens, you've got there's this colony on the planet or moon where the alien was initially found. Ripley's concerned about it, and then one day this planet stops communicating with the rest of the like civilization, and they're like, shit, something's went on, and that's why they send in the Colonial Marines. And we go in with the Colonial Marines, and we discover the aftermath of stuff that's went down. We see that they were experimenting on a facehugger at some point. We see, where are all the dead bodies? We eventually find them. And there's this sense of discovery as they go in, because we don't know what they're going to find. And I think the extended cut of Aliens has some good stuff in it, but one of the things that I don't like about the extended cut is that it shows this colony before like everything happens. And it doesn't completely spoil what they're going to find when they go there, but it does kind of take a little bit of the mystique out of it. And I think that's even more true here, because we know exactly what's happened to all these people, and we know exactly why it's happened to all these people, right? The opening scenes show you like someone doing something that triggers it all. It shows you them all being there and how the lab shuts off. So when we're following the team going down into the entrance and like, okay, we're going to open this big door and go to the lab, it's like, I already know what we're going to find. Like, there's no excitement or mystique here. There's no sense of discovery. There's no sense of awe. It's just, we'll just cut to a 3D simulation map of the lab a couple times, and it'll spin around, and we'll get some Marilyn Manson music coming in and doing weird stuff. Yeah, he did the score for this, by the way. Just he co-wrote the score at least, and the score's all over the place as well. There's times where it goes into like techno music. There's times where it goes into like sort of metal-y music. It's not what I'd want in a Resident Evil adaptation at all.
Not at all. It really pisses me off that like the first bit of, let's say maybe a scare or like people being put in peril are like these people in a, I don't know if I want to say like malfunctioning, but let's say like in an elevator that is, going crazy. And it's just like what is this? Like, this is Resident Evil. Like where are the zombies? Where are, I mean, obviously that stuff comes later, but it's like, the first thing that you're going to give me of like people in peril or whatever is like a freaking elevator. I don't know. It's just like, it just started me off on such a bad mood.
One of my least favorite things about this movie as well, I'm thinking about it now, is the main characters have amnesia for most of the movie.
Why?
That's what they tried to replace for the sense of discovery. They wanted to have like, the character doesn't know who she is, so she's going to like learn about it over the, and it's not even like how she learns about it's interesting. It's just every so often she'll have like a quick flash of a memory, and we'll just get a little bit each time. Like, I swear, by the time we got to the end of this movie, if I heard the phrase, I've got the underground codes and the works, like if I heard that line coming from Alice one more time, I was going to lose my shit, because we hear it like 3 or 4 times over the course of different flashbacks. So like the whole amnesia thing again, like I find that kind of just an annoying story mechanic, like separating it from the fact that it's an adaptation of the game. But as an adaptation of the game, I'm going, what the hell are you doing? No main character in any of the Resident Evils before or since, as far as, at least in the main games, maybe some weird spin-off had something, but none of them have had a character who has amnesia. It doesn't know who the hell she is. Yeah. So it's like, basically, they replaced all of the things that make Resident Evil interesting with these other things, but all of these other things they've done it with, which is the AI that's gone amok, the amnesia, so the characters don't know who they are. All of these things they've put in the place of just doing what the game did to create mystique, it completely falls flat. It's completely uninteresting and just bogs everything down.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And it does seem like there's like very little actual like horror to this. Like, if I was gonna categorize this, like I wouldn't even say like horror movie. It's like it feels more like an action movie with, I guess, maybe like some horror sci-fi elements or whatever. But I mean, that feels like it's just such a misstep from, I mean, obviously like the later games can get like a bit more actiony or whatever, but again, if we're comparing this as, the first video game, it's just about that survival horror.
I mean, keep in mind, when this movie came out, like, the later actiony games didn't exist yet. That's true. Years before Resident Evil 4 came out. So, like, like, some of the characters do kind of get a little superhero-y in later, and let's be honest, the worst games, like we were talking about 6 and shit like that, and like one of them is like a half mutant, so they got like superpowers. Like like that was shit in the games too. That does not excuse the movies for going down a weird path. I just surely it's not that difficult. Right, and it clearly is. Like, writing a screenplay is difficult, and even the best, they're simpler of times. But surely we can have a script. And I remember actually back in the day, I found on the interwebs the script that George Romero wrote for a Resident Evil movie, and it wasn't perfect, right? I think even in that they got to the lab kind of quick. But it was the characters from the games, and there were some changes. I remember, like, Chris wasn't a part of STARS. He was kind of like a local farmer who got involved. But the rest of the team were all STARS, and they kind of, like, went through a bunch of stuff. But it definitely had a lot more beats in it that felt like it was trying to be an adaptation of the games. Obviously, there's not time for all the monsters because, it's you've got a 2-hour movie versus, like, playing it through a game over the course of 12 hours or whatever the first playthrough might take.
I mean, what a dark timeline we're living in when, I doubt that it would have been perfect, but just the idea of having a George Romero Resident Evil movie is so much more enticing than a Paul W.S. Anderson one.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, like, not much that he made after this time period was that good, Romero, but yeah, like, it is a more interesting proposition at the very least. And then George Romero did do like a commercial for Resident Evil or something, right? Like Resident Evil 2? I'm assuming that you're talking about the live action commercial where you see Leon and Claire running around. Yeah, I mean, maybe that was him. Yeah, I don't know.
I could be wrong, but I thought he did that.
Maybe he did. Maybe that's what got him involved in the first place, where he wrote a script.
But if he did, that'd be cool that we at least have a little something that he did. Look it up.
Yeah. So it's I don't know, like, as a movie on its own, it's really, really mediocre to me. As an adaptation of Resident Evil, it's like, I won't say it's the absolute worst case scenario because the sequels exist, so I can point to even worse scenarios. But it's a rough time.
Okay, yeah, it does say Resident Evil 2 commercial by George Romero. Cool.
Okay, nice.
Well, I mean, as hard as it is to believe, like, it does get worse. And again, not like it's a high bar or anything, but like, if we're talking about, adaptations and stuff, like, I'd probably say this is better than that Netflix show from a few years ago.
I mean, yeah, that's
like, if you look at the history of like adaptations of Resident Evil, like, it's really bizarre. Like, this whole timeline of movies, it's very strange and goes in weird directions. That Netflix show was beyond bizarre. I don't know what the hell they were thinking of that. And then, we reviewed Welcome to Raccoon City, which, I mean, it has a lot of flaws. I think there's some fun stuff to it, but still, that one also does have just like weird choices with like some of the music stings and combining games and stuff. And
yeah, I mean, that one was more shallow pandering. Like, Welcome to Raccoon City is the opposite of this movie, right? And that doesn't make it a good movie. It's just the opposite in that it's got plenty of faults. It just happens to be worshipping the game without being a good movie, whereas this is not worshipping the game but is also not being a good movie. So
yeah, it's tough because I feel like there was a time when adaptations were just like, we don't give a shit about the source material, we're just going to do whatever we want, which I don't think is necessarily great. But then I feel like, kind of like you're saying, like, we swung too far in the opposite direction where, like, oh no, we want things that are like painstakingly, I guess maybe not even accurate, but kind of like you were saying, where it was just like, we'll just throw in a lot of Easter eggs and that will like appease people, and like, that's not really good either.
It was Easter eggs, the movie. Like, I'm okay with it being painstakingly accurate as long as the script's actually good. Like, as long as it actually tells a good story and is compelling from beat to beat, then I'll take accurate. I'll take good and accurate over
bad and crappy.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what the opposite is. I guess what I'm saying is that ideally you have great, and I can accept great and like different. I obviously would accept great and accurate, and then every other combination kind of sucks.
Sure.
Honestly, I'm not a big book reader, generally speaking, so because of that, although amusingly, I have read the Resident Evil book adaptations of the games. Say, that's like one of the few book series I've actually committed to.
Yeah, was those SD Perry?
Yeah, they're not bad. At least from what I remember, they're not bad.
Yeah, I remember having fun. I haven't read like all of them, but I probably read the first 4-ish or so, and I remember. I mean, it's funny because there was a time when you didn't just have so much content. So the idea that they had a book like, because there's one, what was it, like Caliban's Cove, that was showing you like, was it Rebecca?
Yeah, it was like in between 1 and 2. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, nowadays they would probably make like a limited edition, TV show about it or something. But when you didn't have as much content, like it was kind of exciting to be like, oh yeah, I'll read these books and see what happened to them. But
I mean, I can say for sure that I enjoyed reading those books way more than I've enjoyed any of the movies or TV shows that they've made of Resident Evil. And that includes those CG movies. I mean, I've only seen the first one, but it was terrible.
Yeah, I think they... Again, I don't know if I've seen all of them because... I'm sorry, just... You need to number your movies or else I can't follow. I have so much trouble remembering which one's which. But I think I've seen most of the CGI movies, and none of them have really done much for me. The first one I remember being like especially bad, and like especially the animation and stuff. But I do think it gets better, but it's still not like anywhere where it's like, okay, this is something that I'm happy to watch or want to seek out.
It's especially a shame because like in the last couple of years, we've had 2 great video game TV shows. We've had Last of Us and Fallout, and what's interesting is they both do very different types of...
Don't forget about Knuckles.
Is that even out? Does that exist yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually did watch it, and it's funny like how little Knuckles content is actually in it.
Oh no. Yeah. Knuckles costs money. Every time he's on screen, every second he's on screen, Tim, it costs money. You can't be throwing Knuckles around too willy-nilly.
So yeah, I haven't actually watched those shows yet, but I have heard they're quite good. They're on my list. I'll get to them eventually, but I haven't played any of those games, so I'm not really like I haven't really been that eager.
I mean, but they're 2 very different types of adaptations because Last of Us is an adaptation, right? It's taking the story of the game and doing it pretty accurate. There's definitely new things. Like episode 3 is a big departure, but it's a very good episode, and it kind of fleshes out something in a different way than from the games did. So it's a very solid adaptation, whereas Fallout takes a very different dynamic, which is kind of what the Resident Evil TV show was going for in a sense, where Fallout is just set in the same world of the games, where the games are canon, but is doing its own story, with different characters in that world, and it's pretty good. It's just got a sense of humor. There's a lot of lore that they've built into it. It feels like they really have a love for the games. So, and I think the games are boring to play, but the lore and sense of humor is pretty fun. So, getting to watch a TV show where I don't have to play the boring game is actually perfect for that in a lot of ways. But like, I feel like that's what the Resident Evil TV show was kind of going for, in that we're setting a show that's in the universe of the games but set like years later, which sounds like a fun enough idea. The problem is, the problem is that none of it still felt like Resident Evil. Instead, it was like 2 teenage sisters having like a sort of sibling drama, and then a bunch of post-apocalyptic stuff. And what's so weird about all these movies is that quite quickly these movies become post-apocalyptic, which is funny because none of the games have ever been in a post-apocalyptic world. It's always like just one city that's infected, or it's always just like a building or a ship or something. It's never, the world's completely falling apart. No, the rest of the world's always still existing in Resident Evil. So it's so funny to me that just because, I don't know, Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that, or made it seem like zombie movies have to be post-apocalyptic, all of a sudden once you get to like Resident Evil 2 or certainly 3 in the movies, that's it. Like Resident Evil 3 Extinction, it's a desert. It's like Mad Max. Like, it's.
I remember that one. It's like, yeah, it feels like Mad Max, and there's like, if I remember correctly, there's like dragons and stuff like flying around.
But then the weird thing is, it's not even consistent. It changes after that, and and maybe it's just a location thing, but there's like no sense of continuity in terms of visual style between the movies. It's a whole thing. But anyway, we're getting into the broader picture here. We're to return to
Sure.
Resident Evil 2002. Spoilers, I guess. I don't know how much more I've got to say without spoilers.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it. Spoilers for Resident Evil. You have been warned.
You have once again entered the world of spoilers.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, the movie opens with someone unleashing the T-virus into the lab, and then the lab automatically starts closing everything down, which kills everyone inside, all the scientists and stuff. You mentioned that there's someone in an elevator. That's how the sequence ends, actually. There's a woman trying to get out the elevator, and her head gets caught, and the elevator like goes up to decapitate her.
And again, just to really like hammer home just how much of this style I hate, like it's just trying to be so like slick and like, so when he smashes the T virus, like it can't just be a quick thing. Like, he throws it and then it has to go like close up, like slow motion of it, like flying in the air and then like breaking apart. And it's just like, I just hate how, flashy it's trying to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of quick cuts, a lot of quick little like insert shots of like when it flashes and things like that. There's also like a room of scientists that's filling up with water and they're trying to get out. Yeah, so you get a sense of like all this chaos happening. Some people in the office areas are getting trapped in and like they're getting like gassed in there. So then it cuts to Milla Jovovich's character Alice waking up. And she has amnesia, right? She was in the shower, she wakes up, she sees a red dress. I guess this is meant to be like a nod to Ada, having her in a red dress, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
There's a lot of things in this that are like that, where it's like, okay, I think this is a nod to the games. It's like they constantly want to do little like nods, but they never want to actually just, do the effing game, because that would be ridiculous. So she puts on a red dress, stumbles about the mansion, and is confused and whatever. And
also, like, all this stuff, like the amnesia and what we find out about the character, it just makes it like a lot more confusing than I feel like it needs to be, because the game, it's just a simple story. It's like, oh yeah, they are going to the mansion to find out what happened to their teammates, and then there's stuff in the mansion. Like, here it's all this stuff like, I don't know, what is it, like she's like an environmentalist, or like she's like working undercover to try to take Umbrella down and like all this stuff, and it's like I don't care about this. Why are we doing this? Well,
she wasn't undercover to begin with. I think she's had a change of heart now that she's working for Umbrella.
Okay, it was the guy's sister.
Yeah, she was
undercover, she was the informant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alice was the informant to the undercover sister who was...
I can't care.
Yeah, no, like... I think one of the problems that comes up for me in this movie as well, and it's kind of like a weird thing, is that, so the SWAT team that came in, and this is like when they bust in, for some reason, even though they're coming here to go into the secret entrance to the lab, because of the protocols have been triggered, they all come bursting through the window, and I'm like, why didn't you just come through the door? Like, I don't understand. Like, there was nothing in this building to make you think, oh, we have to do a SWAT team entry. Like, why wouldn't you just come in? Especially since you think Alice is there as your, like, operative, because she's meant to be, like, her and the fake husband are meant to be the guardsmen in the mansion that are just guarding the secret entrance. Because one of the things that's Colin Salmon, who's in this movie, he plays the leader of this team, he comes up to Alice immediately and says, report, soldier. So why did you burst in the window? Like, there's a threat in here. I don't understand. That's weird. But that
because it looks cool.
But that mentality continues throughout the whole movie, though, in a sense, because in the games, the STARS team that are coming, right, as you say, there's been murders in the mountains. Some team members have come out to investigate it. They went missing, so the main STARS team come in to see what's happened, and they end up at the mansion when they get attacked, right? And then stuff unfolds from there. They come in as a third party and discover all this stuff is going on. But this SWAT team are going down to the lab because, the AI, the Red Queen, has like went homicidal and shut down the lab and killed everyone inside it. And I'm like, okay, so we're going down to find out what happened. However, like when the Red Queen comes on later and explains, the contagion got released, and because of that I had to like stop everyone from leaving to contain the virus. I'm like, wouldn't that be like something that you could have predicted? Or like that's the most likely explanation, is that she was containing something that broke free. It's not like Umbrella didn't know what they were doing down here and the type of stuff that was here. And then later on, I was like even getting annoyed at like it felt like I was getting a lot of conflict where, okay, this SWAT team are down here on behalf of Umbrella, but it feels like as soon as shit goes down, they're immediately just like, we just want to get out and live now. Like, there's none of that dynamic of like, someone's actually always there for the company. Even the guy who turns out to be a bad guy, who I guess is kind of like our Wesker, he's only doing it for his own good. He's just want to sell stuff in the black market. It's not because he's like secretly aligned with Umbrella or he wants to do bioweapon shit or anything like that. So I don't know. Like I felt like the allegiances of like a lot of the characters to the company and to like whether or not they were even invested in this, other than just being grunts that were being sent down to investigate something, made them less interesting. Like, and
I agree.
There's kind of characters like that. I mean, I guess technically in Resident Evil 3, like Carlos's team, like they're kind of sent in by Umbrella, but they don't really know what's going on. But I don't know, like they dress all these characters like Hunk. So, and Hunk's a lot more cold in the games. So I don't know. It feels a bit. It feels a bit needlessly not convoluted, but just like I don't know, lacking.
Well, I mean, I never get any sense of like who these characters are, other than we're like super uber military badass types.
Yes, there's no.
Which is like, if you have one of those characters, cool. But when it's just like your whole team is just that, and it's pretty boring.
Yeah. I mean, it can be done to an extent. Again, see Aliens.
Yeah, if it was James Cameron doing it, I'm sure it would be a lot more, there'd be more layers there and they'd be more interesting.
Yeah.
But
literally half of these characters like are just here to be killed, and you never like like, for example, when we get to the famous laser hallway scene, the guy that says what's that has got blonde hair, and I swear I'm like, okay, were you in any scenes before this one? I genuinely don't know. He must have been, but like that's his big moment, is he goes, what's that? that's his thing, that's his whole thing. Dear. So it feels weird that they have to send a team down to figure out what's happened, when it seems like they should, even if the computer doesn't send them that information, which, first of all, why wouldn't the computer send out the information to like headquarters saying, hey, there's been an outbreak, this is why I'm shutting everything down? And
you'd think. Yeah,
and like, okay, so they're down here to like disable the computer and figure out what happened, but like, I don't know, it doesn't all make complete sense. It's not like they're down here to retrieve the virus, unless they try and sell me that Colin Salmon had like an objective the others didn't know about, where he's meant to like retrieve the valuable specimens or whatever, or something like that. But nothing like that ever comes up. Not, we don't get any. In fact, Colin Salmon dies surprisingly early, so we don't even get any like development with a lot of these characters. They mostly die quite quick in the movie, so I don't know. Anyway, also Matt, who says he's a cop, shows up here as well, just as the SWAT team are bursting in, and he gets handcuffed because he's like kind of a trespasser. But they take them with them anyway to the secret train, which is definitely based on the train from Resident Evil 2 at the end.
Yeah.
I have nothing to add, but visually it looks like that.
Yeah.
And they take the train to the Hive, and they go through some big blast doors, and they get in. Meanwhile, Colin Salmon explains what this place is, and we get the first of a couple. I guess this was their way of like, you're always looking at your map in Resident Evil, so we'll do like a map visual. But it's like this 3D map where the camera's like spinning around it, so it feels needlessly like high tech. Like, hey, look at how fancy it is. Everything's so slick and glossy, like you were saying earlier. So
that's bad.
Enjoyed that. Also, they run into another guy on the train who obviously turns out to be the villain later on, but he was the guy posing as Alice's husband in the mansion.
Right.
He's also got amnesia.
Yeah. Also, another big slight against this movie. I'm pretty sure we don't like see any zombies until about 40 minutes in, which is just, I don't know, way too long for me.
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree. I could see it working depending on what the focus was up until the first zombie. But I think given that we do, like you say, a lot of other threats in this with the AI going rogue and like, you know, we the AI kills more people in this movie than the zombies do.
Yeah.
Which feels a little bit odd for a movie called Resident Evil, which is strange. There is a lot of zombies once they do start showing up, but it does take a good bit of time before we get our first one.
Yeah, and then another thing that just really bugs me is they are the type of zombies that I just generally do not enjoy, which are, you know, they're a bit like faster and like I don't think we're getting like, well, I don't know where they can.
They're not running though. They're kind of in between like traditional zombies and the runners from, you know, your Dawn of the Dead remake, like Dawn or whatever.
Remakes, yeah. Yeah, but they're just like a little too like, yeah, what I don't know, like energetic or whatever, and they make that. I don't know how you describe it, but they make that one voice that is just like so generic that every like bad zombie movie makes them make, where it's just like, rah! Like, it's just really annoying.
I wonder if they are actually energetic, or if it's just all the shaky camera cuts are making it feel like they're quite quick and energetic. Yeah. So I wonder how that actually pans out. But
yeah, I mean, again, I mean, maybe it's unfair to you keep comparing it to the game or whatever, but I remember playing the first game and, you know, that first zombie moment where you just walk in and, again, like, you know, it's very early on in the game, you know, versus here where it, you know, half the movie is over before we start seeing zombies. But like, yeah, when you first come to that zombie and, you know, like your character doesn't know what's going on, and like the zombie like does that slow like head turn and then stands up and it kind of shambles towards you. I mean, maybe that's too slow for some people, but to me it's just so much more effective and creepy than like, yeah, you're in a dark room and all of a sudden there's like 30 zombies and they're all like jumping out at you and, yeah, like running and shaking their arms and stuff.
Well, I mean, in the games, it's not so much that the zombies are that dangerous on their own. It's more that you're in tight spaces and they represent obstacles to get to other locations. So it becomes kind of like part of the puzzle of the game, if you will, is figuring out the best routes to go around them and how to like conserve ammunition and stuff. And the first time we get zombies in this movie, we basically get 2 or 3 characters with machine guns just mowing them down in an extended action sequence with lots of quick cuts for a good couple of minutes. And it's just kind of like, okay, your ammo's going to run out and then the horde's just going to keep coming. It very much changes the dynamic from like, okay, we've got a tight hallway, there's like one zombie. I mean, hell, in this movie, we've also got characters without any weapons, just like snapping necks and like spin kicking zombies and stuff.
Right.
Which, and I guess,
oh my god. I mean, we'll get to it, but when Alice spin kicks the dog, that's just like the opposite of anything I want out of Resident Evil.
Yeah, I think it's fair to compare. Obviously, again, not everything should be like translated 1-to-1, because there's a reason why you adapt things differently, because different things work in different mediums. But I think the reason why you fall into that pattern a lot when talking about this is because you know how the game made you feel. You know how it made you feel at various moments, and how much this movie is failing to make you feel any of those things. You know, the way it should make you feel those things is probably different, because it's a movie and not a game. You're not controlling the character. You're not actually fighting for your life yourself. But it should be attempted to make you feel the same things that the game made you feel, and it does not. Like, it's going for adrenaline. It's going for, you know, the horde is coming. There's not a single moment in pretty much any of the classic Resident Evil games where I would describe anything as a horde.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Resident Evil 6, but
I said early Resident Evil.
Oh, early. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't. And besides, even if that was technically true, I'm like 6 is. That's not a good like note for.
I mean, that doesn't count.
Yeah, like the movie's not getting points for doing something from 6, the game that almost every Resident Evil fans hate.
Yeah.
So,
oh, brother.
Yeah. Anyway, they find like a room full of containers that have got like monsters in it. You know, they tease the liquor, which is in one of the crates. You don't see much of it, of course, but it's just a little tease for later. Very quickly they get to the hallway with the lasers. It's the hallway to the mainframe for the computer system for the AI, and they've got these big blocks that they're going to put into it that'll shut it down for reasons. So this is like still in this era where they say things about computer systems that just sound ridiculous by today's standards. You're like, wait, why is your EMP or whatever it is these big blocks you plug into it? Like, that doesn't seem right. But the computer basically tries to defend itself by locking several of the SWAT team in the hallway, and lasers come and try and, it successfully kills them all by slicing through them. When the first laser comes, the woman in the room gets her head sliced off and it sort of falls down slowly. The second guy tries to jump, but the laser moves up, so he gets him in the midsection. And then Colin Salmon does
It's kind of funny.
It's a little funny. Salmon does successfully dodge it the first time, but then it makes a big grid to basically give him no chance of surviving, which is a little funny. I remember on the commentary track, actually, I don't remember a lot of that commentary track, but the one detail I remember is that when they got to this scene, they brought up that some people had said, was this inspired by Cube? And Anderson said he'd never seen it. But it is hard not to think of Cube when you get to the end of this laser hallway scene, because it's got a very similar kind of body falling apart effect that is in that movie. But
yeah, I mean, this kill is like decent enough. Like, again though, it's just not like what I think of when I think of like Resident Evil, and to be fair, like there are like things in Resident Evil where, you know, there are traps, but yeah, I don't know, this just, you know, it's like too high tech and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and before anyone gets smart about it, yes, Resident Evil 4, which came out later, did put in a laser hallway after the fact as a reference basically to this movie.
I was gonna say, was that an intentional reference?
It must have been. There's no way that wasn't an intentional reference to this. Which, you know, I remember like getting to that bit and just being like, oh, okay, really, we're referencing that shitty movie, all right, I guess. But it's an okay scene as a schlocky kind of like murder scene for sure. It definitely feels like up until this point, though, this is kind of the biggest threat they've faced, is this laser hallway. And if this is what we're having instead of like the more traditional like puzzles that have some traps associated, because, you know, the traps in the games are more simple, like some gas will be released into the room, or I don't know, the ceiling will start falling down. It was like a simple mechanism that you can understand. This is more like a fancy science fiction laser that can make different shapes and like cut through anything and move down a hallway. We just go into complete sci-fi territory. Whereas in Resident Evil, the game, at least the early games, other than the virus that makes zombies and monsters, everything else, dare I say, is still just kind of grounded in reality. And that's, you know, it's only the main premise that's like otherworldly, that goes beyond the norm. Everything else is still like true to life within reason. Like, obviously, I'm not saying everything, like, I'm sure there's some dodgy physics and things or whatever at some point, but
right, yeah.
But yeah, I like, it's fine. I don't know. I this is probably a scene that people who like this movie really like. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, I guess I like it more than other parts of the movie, but, you know, it's not on its own. It's not enough to justify like the movie's existence or anything.
No, and it kills off a lot of the characters like quite quickly. So because like, 4 people go into that room, so the SWAT team is left over with the tech guy who's back at the computer console, And then Michelle Rodriguez, who was not even mentioned yet, she plays Rain, your tough chick character. She's back in the other area with another SWAT team guy, who I want to say was JD, who they were kind of poking fun at each other in one scene briefly, so that's like the one thing we have about any of these SWAT team characters is that they might be friends. Like, that's it. She seems upset when JD dies. And again, that's even pretty soon, because obviously turning off the computer is what releases all the doors and lets all the zombies out into everywhere. So we get the big scene where they're fighting off the zombies and start the bite count, because Michelle Rodriguez gets bitten in this film like 5 times. So her first of many bites is in this scene, where she gets bit in the hand.
And at this point, we've already seen the dumb little laser projection of the what do you call it, the hive or whatever.
The Red Queen is the Red Queen,
AI. Yeah.
And of course, she has this little British girl who's like, "You're all going to die down here."
And I remember that being like such a big, I want to say that was like a big part of the trailer or whatever. I feel like, people were quoting that or something, and it's so dumb. I hate it.
Actually, there's a moment here that I didn't like as well, is that when they go in to like shut down the computer, because they're all nervous about crossing that hallway again, even though the guy's like, "No, I've shut down our defenses." I'm like, "You sure, buddy?" Because like no one seemed to think there was a risk before. But when they go into the room and he's putting in the things to shut her down, this is when the red hologram comes up and she's like, "What are you doing? Don't turn me off. No." And she starts saying various things like, "Please don't," or whatever. The tech guy is like, "Hey, don't listen to her. She'll say whatever she can to convince us to not shut her down." And I'm like, wait a minute. Why do you expect her to try and trick you and like emotionally manipulate you? Why is that built into this thing's system? And why do you know about it to this extent? And if you do know about it to this extent, like, I guess my problem is this. Later on in the film, it becomes clear that she only shut everything down and killed everyone to contain the virus, which, while kind of cold and cruel, ultimately actually is probably just doing what it's supposed to do to save
robotic logic.
It's quarantine style thing, right? You stop it from spreading, containment, makes sense. But in this scene, it's heavily implied that she's went rogue and that this guy is expecting her to try and manipulate everyone by acting like a little girl so that they'll show it mercy. And I'm like, but if she was just doing what she was supposed to do, why is she making weird thinly veiled threats about "you're all going to die down here" and things like that? Like, it doesn't really make much sense. Like, is it a computer that's went rogue like HAL 9000, or is it just doing what it's supposed to do? And if it's just doing what it's supposed to do, then why did we need a SWAT team to come down and investigate it? And if we have a SWAT team to come down and investigate it and the computer's like shutting everything down and even try to stop them from leaving to contain the virus, then why do the effing umbrella scientists at the end of the movie immediately say, "We're reopening the hive. It's been 10 minutes. We're reopening it. We have to find out what went on down there."
It's also terrible. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Was this a first draft? Like, did anyone really think about it too hard?
That really bugged me on this viewing, was when he said that, like, "Oh, she'll say anything to get us to stop her from turning her off." And I'm like, oh, so you're saying that she is alive and she's like sentient and she has desires and she wants to stay alive. But then later on, it's like, no, she just did what she was supposed to do. So the sassy personality's like just like an offshoot or something. Like, it was so weird. I know.
Yeah, maybe don't like design that part of it when you're making your big killer robot.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I would say that normally the reaction to this would be, oh, she's become sentient, so she's trying to manipulate us to not turn her off. But the way the guy says this, "Oh, don't listen to her, she'll say anything so that we won't turn her off," that implies that he was already expecting it. So why was he already expecting that? Unless it was built into her system for some reason.
That's a very good question.
I'm full of good questions, Tim. I'm full of them.
I don't know, maybe he talks to her on a regular basis and like she cheats at checkers and tries to get like extra cookies during lunch. So maybe he just knows like, oh yeah, she'll say anything.
Oh, that's wild. I mean, it makes sense he knows about it. That's why he's down there with the team, and that's why he's the one that's like switching her off. Maybe he is familiar with her system, but like it doesn't explain everything else. So, oh dear. So, the others reunite with Michelle Rodriguez and co. More zombies show up. We get our scene where they're all just shooting zombies for ages and eventually run away because they can't, deal with the horde.
Yeah. I think we've had some dogs at this point too.
No, I think that's after the retreat, because I think that's when like Michelle or when Milla Jovovich goes off wandering into the room with the dogs, and this is wild, this scene, because like other than maybe showing that she's like physically like capable of fighting, and because it's like she's remembering, oh shit, I've got this muscle memory. Other than that, this scene with the dogs serves no purpose other than to just be the scene with the dogs.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me that the dogs never show up anywhere else. But she's in the kennel area and she sees a dog. She runs into the little sort of other room to get away from it, but there's a zombie in there. So she spin kicks the zombie, which apparently is enough to kill the zombie. She hit it so hard in the head that it was effective, I guess, zombie.
I don't mind the idea, because again, I like in Resident Evil that you turn a corner and there might be something there that you're not expecting. So I like the idea of, to escape one threat, you go into this door and there's, an immediate other threat. But again, like you say, it's just like, not handled well, where it's just like, oh yeah, it's, they're doing like a jump scare kind of scream thing. And then she's like kicking it and doing all these martial arts. And it's just, it's nothing like subtle or anything creepy about it.
Yeah, I think the first thing for me as well is that when she comes out of the room and the dog's there, and it's like she's maybe dealt with it, but she's picked up a handgun in that room, and there's a whole like half dozen dogs now, and it's like, okay, she's faced with a half dozen dogs. They're all zombie dogs. They're coming for her. This scene then just turns into her firing the gun, and she apparently just gets headshots in all of the dogs because she just sort of goes boom, 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 and that's all it is. She stands in a single position and fires the gun. And other than the last dog, obviously, that pops out at the end where she does the whole big running up the wall jump kick thing, like, it's just her standing in place shooting the gun. It's the most dull and uninteresting way to like stage an action sequence if that's what you're going to do. So it's not even engaging on its own merits that it's going for. It's just using quick editing to try and make it feel exciting, but it's not exciting. I mean, maybe if you showed that she was surprised she like hit all the dogs in the head, maybe you could do like a whoa, I'm like I don't know, but if you were doing that though, you'd probably just keep the camera on a single shot of her just going boom, 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 boom. There's like a moment in Firefly where River does that, but the camera just stays on her, and then it's like, oh shit, she shot all the targets. That's telling us she's like a super spy, or she's like amazing at this or something. Which admittedly I don't love. Like, I think part of the survival horror is that the character should feel vulnerable. So if you give me a character who's like super capable, then it maybe feels like you're taking away some of the vulnerability, some of the horror of it. But that's another debate. What did you think of how the dogs looked?
Not great. Like, it just looks like, I don't know, did they just like slop some stuff on them? Like it looks like they just may put like a little bit of like meat or prosthetics or something on them.
I was okay with how they look, just because at least they're real dogs. It's not CG.
Yeah.
It felt
I guess I'd prefer it to CG. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it looked fine. Like, is there a better way they could look? Probably, but it didn't offend me by any means.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I didn't love it, but it definitely could have been worse.
So, yeah, Matt also goes looking for his sister and actually runs into her, and then Alice jumps out and saves him, and his zombie sister tries to bite him, but he explains who they are and what she was doing here. That they're environmentalists, they're trying to expose Umbrella for everything they're doing, and she went undercover, she had a contact. He didn't know who the contact was, but Alice is already having quick flashbacks to like being the contact. Yeah, I don't really have much to. It's actually shocking how little like development this guy Matt gets, or I mean any of them really, to be honest.
I just could care less at all. I mean, I'm already so checked out of the movie by this point that anything they're talking about, I'm just like, all right, fine. That's your explanation. All right, let's just slowly get our way to the end.
Well, I mean, I think for me, the two things that they really don't have that they should be having in a Resident Evil movie here is that one, we should really be talking about resources and like how much ammo we have and like can we get any more? Is there some way we can try and like up our odds? And two, I think there should be clear ideas of the geography so that we can understand like, you know, because they basically say, oh, we can get out of here, and then the solution is to turn the Red Queen back on, so the Red Queen will give us like some secret places we can go to go through tunnels and whatnot. But I really think it should have been made clear like the different stages of this trip, and like, okay, we have to go through the cafeteria to get to this, because that would kind of mimic planning your route in a Resident Evil game. But forgetting it being an adaptation here, that would just be good in general, because that's kind of what makes these types of movies work. Mm-hmm. Is that you have a sense of their destination, how difficult it's going to be, and it's like, okay, we hope there's nothing in between here and there. We hope these rooms are empty, or maybe we know one room's dangerous, but we can maybe get around it this way or something. And then, oh no, the big room we thought would be easy turns out is filled with zombies. We're going to have to like think on our feet here or something like that. We don't get any of that sense or feeling. We just sort of have them go into some generic tunnel areas, and then eventually zombies burst out. But there's never a sense of like how close they are to the end, or like anything like that. Not to mention the fact that when the zombies pop out in this movie after the initial zombie appearance, it's almost always like just a horde that it's like a sea of zombies that they can't really deal with. Like Michelle Rodriguez gets bit here for the second time when JD zombie like tries to bite her, and then they're crawling on pipes above the actual like tunnel system. And we get a big sequence here where the pipes collapse and the tech guy like falls in, and he almost commits suicide because he thinks he's going to die, but he instead uses his last bullet on the zombie climbing up the pipe and goes crawling as well, because he's going to save the day later on. So wait for that.
Yeah, I don't know. Just none of this stuff is just really that interesting to me. Like, again, like with the games and stuff, like, you know, this should be the point where things are really ramping up and we're getting some like, you know, interesting revelations and starting to get towards the end game, I guess. But I don't know, here it just feels like going through the motions, and just I don't know, I just don't really care about any of it.
I mean, I don't think anyone can blame you for not caring, Tim. It's, yeah, there's a whole moment here where Michelle Rodriguez is like holding her hand out and letting her blood drip into the zombies to like basically tease them. Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, you like that,
so
don't
badass.
You?" Yeah. I mean, the problem is Michelle Rodriguez pretty much always plays the same character, right? Like she's always kind of the tough chick, which is fine. Like if she's typecast, she's typecast, but.
I mean, she does a good job of it, but again, it's just not the kind of character I want in this movie.
Well, I mean, let's say that this wasn't Resident Evil, right? The problem is, and I feel like I'm saying that a lot, because like I feel like every time you say it's not what you want in Resident Evil, I have to counter it by saying, but let's forget that it's Resident Evil for a second. Here's just on its own what doesn't work about it is that it doesn't do anything to develop her having a relationship with anyone else. Like, obviously, at the end, when she's like dying, and Alice is like, distraught about having to maybe shoot her in the head because she might turn into a zombie. I'm like, this would mean more if it felt like there was like some bonding throughout the movie. Sure. Maybe they'd have some camaraderie throughout. Maybe like these two unlikely allies would like sort of find some kind of like sort of mutual female friendship or something, surrounded by these tough assholes or whatever. But nothing ever forms of that. There's never a moment where one of them looks out for the other and maybe forms a bond or anything like that. Same with the other characters. The only thing they do is that they have Alice and the fake husband character, whatever his name is, they have them have a couple of nice flirty moments, just so that when he turns out to be the bad guy, it's supposed to feel like a bigger, blow to the system, a bigger shock, a bigger, like, oh no, he's the villain. but they don't actually really put much effort into really developing friendships with any other characters so that it's believable they care about each other by the end. I mean, the obvious one that I guess you could argue they kind of tried to set up was Alice and Matt, because Matt, like, you know, tells her everything about his sister and what they were trying to do here. But honestly, after this scene, can you remember a single thing they say to each other that isn't just run, go, you know, move quick, until like basically the very end of the movie? Like,
yeah.
You know, they don't. There's no development. There's no like bonding. There's not even like, they set up that she was the contact, and Matt, I don't even think, finds out that she was the contact. Never mind, goes through like a bit where she's like, no, I was the contact and I never betrayed her. I was trying to help her. Someone else, did something. Like, I don't think it ever even like comes up, because the other guy turns out to be the villain. They all just like, oh, you're the bad guy. You did all this. Like, that's it. No, like, so the question of like who her contact was never even comes up again. It's just, it's unfulfilling. But not only is it unfulfilling because they just kind of like forget to bring it up again, it's unfulfilling as well because it could have been used in theory to at least develop that relationship, so that at the end, when he's like being scratched by the liquor and the scientists are taking him away and she's like yelling for him, I might care that she's scared what's going to happen to him, because in an ideal world, if they're the only two survivors of this whole turmoil of this Resident Evil, laboratory, like, night of chaos, it should feel like a big deal that they're being separated after the fact. Like, the one person she survived with, the one person she could count on. But it's not like throughout the movie I'm like, oh, she was counting on him and he was there for her and she was there for him and they were saving each other and stuff. It doesn't feel like that at all. So nothing is being developed. I don't feel any compassion for any of these characters or anything. So yeah, I think it's a failure without even like saying, is it an adaptation of Resident Evil? It's just a failure on the level of making me care about any of these characters and making it feel like they care about each other in any meaningful way. Now, obviously, I'm not saying they should be all super close, because Alice doesn't really know any of these characters before tonight. In fact, she has amnesia, so even if she did know them, she wouldn't like know them anyway. But there should be some bonding with one or two of them throughout.
Yeah, just like, no one is just interesting or likable. Like, yeah, again, there's just very little that ever makes me endeared to them. Here's
a little experiment, Tim. Tech guy who does the computery stuff. Describe his personality.
He is a tech guy who does computery stuff.
Colin Salmon, the leader of the team. Describe his personality.
I actually thought he did a pretty good job being the leader of the team and portraying a leader of a team.
Matt, the brother who's trying to look for his sister, is pretending to be a cop. What's his personality?
Oh, I totally believe that he was a brother pretending to be a cop.
I think I'm making my point. And Alice, I mean, I guess the flashbacks are trying to reveal, okay, she was actually secretly a good person who was trying to take down Umbrella. So that should make us sympathetic for her. And that's all fine. I think the problem with Umbrella in this movie as they're presented is that everything in this movie is framed as the computer going haywire and doing this to everyone, or even though arguably it was doing the right thing when we find out why it did everything it did. It never presents Umbrella as like the evil villain that it is. Like, yes, obviously, like Matt says, yeah, they're doing like illegal experiments and they should be exposed for it. But like, Umbrella in the games is like, it feels like they are just like throwing people into experiments and to see what happens, and it's like monstrous and it's like really, really sadistic stuff. And by the end of the story, like, oh, we have to expose these guys for everything they're doing. But I never feel like the focus is there, whereas the movie goes on, the characters like on the team are like, oh shit, we work for like a monstrous corporation. Like, the things they're doing down here, like, that would have made me care a little bit. Like, if the characters like actually start to have like a belief by the end of the movie, where they've got a goal, where they're like, hey, we have to do something about this. But yeah, you know, Michelle Rodriguez never says anything like that. She never says, oh shit, like, I can't believe Umbrella are doing all these things. We have to expose them. Tech Guy doesn't say it, and they're the only two of the SWAT team that are still alive for the back half of the movie. So, like, they're the only ones that really matter.
Yeah. Man, that's just thinking about how the game does it so well. Like the way they reveal parts of the story through, like, you know, the diary entries or notebooks or whatever you find throughout the mansion. Yeah, I don't know. It's just such good storytelling, just nothing like that here.
Yeah, because it's often from the perspective of someone who's working for Umbrella, but like the famous Etchy Tasty journal entry, which is like someone slowly turned into a zombie, and you realize what's happened to him as you read it. Is very good. So you get no sympathy like that here for any of the victims, but what I was getting at there is that I don't feel like by the end of the movie it feels like the story has affected any of these characters to convince them to have a stance in what's happening.
Yeah.
And Alice technically does care, but it just we find out that she already cared before she got amnesia. We never really get a sense of why she cared beforehand. Like, did she know the extent of the experiments going on down here? Like, why did she care so much? Why was she willing to like sabotage it and work with an outsider who was coming in to expose them? Like, maybe showing us why she had that change of heart would have been something to make us latch on to the character. Because it's not like when she gets her memory back towards the end of the movie, it's not like she has a moment where she's like, oh god, like I'm remembering everything else they do down here, or she's like just one scene of them being horrified at what Umbrella's done down here would have maybe sold like Umbrella as the villain a bit better, but it never feels like they have that moment. They never have like that kind of like, oh, this is horrific. This is like inhuman. What's happening here? They never do that.
Yeah, and again, it's like a poor choice where I forget exactly what it does, but in the beginning, don't they have that little like voiceover or whatever that says what Umbrella is?
Oh yeah, they have like text on the screen. It's like, oh, Umbrella, one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and then like it, you know, they don't like outright say like, oh yeah, and they're evil or whatever, but then, you know, they're talking about, yeah, I think they go a little bit to the T virus, and then they talk about how like, oh, like, you know, they decided to use it for, you know, military weapons or weaponry or like something dumb like that. But I mean, you're already starting off with like, you know, telling us, oh yeah, the company is bad and evil, where, you know, again, that's something that maybe would be better, you know, if you, I mean, not like anyone is going to think like, oh yeah, the corporation must be nice and good, but like, you know, you can at least have that discovery throughout the movie, and like you're talking about, kind of have that, like, you know, revelation from the characters or whatever, but instead, like, it just lays it out to you right in the beginning, like, oh yeah, the company is very big and bad and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, or at the very least tell us like why the main character felt this way, you know, give us something there.
Yeah.
Like maybe the moment that triggers her memory could be her seeing something horrific down here. Like maybe there's like a half alive human on a table that's been experimented on or something. You know, like Alien Resurrection, when like Ripley sees like herself or clone on the table and it's kind of like she's all mutated and stuff. Like maybe give us something like that and like have that be the trigger for why she remembers what she remembers. So I don't know, it's just it's lacking a lot of these things. And I'm not saying you have to make it like a super serious movie. Like Resident Evil, the games are still pretty campy and like fun. It's not like it's a super dramatic, we're doing Stanley Kubrick here or something like that, you know?
Right, yeah, like they're, yeah, like I guess like later on, like the remakes and stuff, like I feel like are take themselves a bit more seriously. But like, you know, the early games, they was more like, you know, they were doing like B movies, you know, like yeah, it wasn't meant like to be like A24 art house kind of horror. It's, I mean, even like they can't be, even
the newer remakes, like, well, they are more serious and you can take them a bit more like seriously. I would still say there's still a level of like fun. Like there's still a little tongue in cheek. There's still a little bit of, oh, we know what we're doing here. We know we're making something with fun characters. We're not completely doing like ultra gritty here. Like, you know, Claire or Leon or whoever will say something that's a little bit funny occasionally, or they'll be fun characters. And there's no characters in this that I would describe as fun.
No.
You know, and admittedly, obviously the games that this is sort of like at the time, the games this had to work with, the characters hadn't really got like that yet. That's more of a modern thing, but it is just an interesting comparison point of just how devoid of personality any of these characters are. So.
I don't know why, but I'm just thinking about that Romero script. If like, if Chris was a farmer, like I'm just imagining him like in like overalls and like a big straw hat and like just being like, oh golly.
I don't think he was meant to be that type of farmer. I think he just was a normal dude. That's all.
Could have been funny though.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that entirely. So anyway, after they fight off or get through a horde of zombies, they get to the lab area, and this is where the bad guy's memories come back. Purefoy's memories come back, and we find out he was listening to the conversation between Alice and the sister about like breaking into Umbrella. And he instead breaks in. He's the one at the start of the movie that unleashed the virus. And the reason why he was on the train where they found him is because he was escaping after he'd done that, but the amnesia gas or whatever kicked in. And there he is. So, yeah. Which actually, that's another thing. At the start of the movie, when Colin Salmon's yelling at Alice, report soldier, eventually the tech guy's like, oh, sir, the house's defenses kicked in. She's probably still suffering the amnesia side effects. And I'm like, okay, so you knew that was a possibility. It's weird that you didn't like tell him that might be happening before you go in. But
yeah,
fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Also, if you knew the house was gassed, and you probably did because you're all wearing gas masks, again, why come through the windows? As if like people are probably unconscious in here if there's anyone here at all. So
yeah,
lots of silly little things. But yeah, so immediately James Purefoy is like, I'm taking my vial and I'm going. He does get bit here by a zombie, the scientist zombie that wakes up out of the water. But there's an antivirus in the movie.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, there's kind of one in the games too in the second game. Because you cure Sherry with it.
Yeah.
And technically in 4 there's an antivirus for the thing that Leon and Ashley get. So it's not unheard of to have that in the games. Michelle Rodriguez is too far gone though, because she get bit like 3 more times.
It's kind of funny. Keep getting bit.
she gets bit so many times. Because she gets bit. I think she gets bit like the 3rd and 4th times when she says GD the zombie, and she's like so hesitant to do anything that she gets bit repeatedly at that point.
She's just too badass to become a zombie though.
Yes. But they're like, hey, there's an antiviral there, and the Red Queen's like, I'll open the door and let you out, but only if you kill Michelle Rodriguez, because I can't let someone who's infected get out. So Alice is going to cut off her head with an axe, but then she doesn't. She smashes the camera or whatever instead. But luckily the tech guy survived and made his way here, and he had a kill switch for the Red Queen, which they did set up earlier. That's not out of nowhere. They did set up that they had like that rigged just in case she did anything dodgy. Meanwhile, though, the villain was going to the train. He gets the case with the virus and the antivirus in it, and he's giving himself the antivirus because he got bit. And this is when our big boy Liquor comes out of the vent or whatever it is. Which the Liquor, honestly, is very hit and miss, because there's 1 or 2 shots where he looks kind of good and authentic, where you can see the brain at the top and he's got the tongue. But then there's a lot of bits, especially like the later times you see him when he's actually attacking them on the train, where it felt like the entire head just like a mush of flesh. Like I didn't see the brain separate from anything else. Obviously, I remember when I saw this movie, I was disappointed they went with the Liquor, because I'm like, the Liquor's Resident Evil 2. Why is the Liquor in this? This should be, if you're going to not do a boss, it should be the Hunter. But let's be honest, it should be the Tyrant. Where's the Tyrant? Come on,
yeah.
Come on, guys. What are we doing here?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, I don't know, maybe it's unfair to keep comparing it to the game or whatever, but it's just...
this is purely an adaptation complaint. Yeah. This is not like a movie on its own complaint. But yeah, go on.
But yeah, I mean, it just feels like, maybe I wouldn't, again, probably wouldn't feel this if I didn't play the games or whatever, but like, yeah, that is just like a low level enemy that you even regardless of the fact that it's in Resident Evil 2 and not 1, but it's like a low level enemy that like encounter pretty early on in the game. It's not like, they can be scary or whatever, but it's not like, final boss, level, and I just love it. It is kind of a silly design, but like I really do love the tyrant look, and and I don't know, I have like a weird fondness for like creatures in tubes, and like I just love in the first game like him like smashing out of the tube and stuff, and so it's a bummer that don't really get much here. Maybe at the time it looked good, but I do think the CGI on this is like pretty bad.
Yeah, it's very hit and miss. Whenever he's jumping towards the camera, it looks pretty rough.
Yeah.
I like, on some level I get it, right? We kind of have as many monsters, and they thought the liquor was a cool design, so they went with that, whatever. Like, but it's, fundamentally you're never going to have enough time in a movie to go through all the monsters that are in the games. Like,
right,
you know, you're always going to like cut some of them, but regardless, tech guy gets them out of the room. They make their way to the train. They give Michelle Rodriguez the anti-serum. They get the train moving, and the final big set piece of the movie is that the liquor is attacking the train. Michelle Rodriguez does turn into a zombie during the fight, and Matt shoots her in the head. He gets scratched. This was kind of like a thing from the games where the liquor is like claws coming through the train metal, because William kind of does that in the second game. So I was like, okay, that's kind of similar. But yeah, we get it's funny actually. It felt like when the liquor kills tech guy who's driving the train, he just sort of like bites his head and like pulls him out, and I thought that was a bit strange. I'm like, surely that's what the tongue's for. The tongue's for grabbing him and pulling him out. So it felt a little inconsistent with the logic of how the liquor functions. Maybe they just didn't think they could get it to look good.
Yeah.
So they left it out. I don't know. They'd be watching some Frogman. Frogman somehow pulled that off.
That's right.
Not a good movie, I don't think, but better than this, I suppose. If I'm.
Well, I mean, watch our review of it. And people make up their mind. For sure.
Well, not watch the movie. Just watch our review and make up your mind.
Well, yeah. You can watch the movie if you want. I think it's coming to Screenbox in either June or July. So maybe people start watching it, and then our reviews will get a little bump.
Oh, maybe. Why not? I ain't gonna be mad about that. So yeah, this big set piece is what it is. So everyone but Alice and Matt have died, and they get out, because one of the things we didn't mention is that the big doors to the hive at the train entrance are going to close shut on a timer. They've only got like an hour to get out, and that was like halfway through the movie. So they get out, and then the door shuts behind them. Obviously it's the last second kind of thing. Which is even why I'm more frustrated why the scientist in a minute is like, we're reopening the hive. I want to know what's been done down there. Like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen when you open the doors. Oh, you idiots. So yeah, Matt starts freaking out. His infection on his arm starts to go nuts. These scientists in hazmat suits show up, and they grab him, and one of them looks at the other and goes, "Put him in the Nemesis program."
What?
Yeah, we have to do like a sequel tease for something that people actually recognize from the games. And then Alice is sent to the Raccoon City Hospital, which they did mention it was under Raccoon City before, but like, we do actually get a glimpse of it at the end here, where she wakes up and she's wearing what I can only describe as 2 sheets of paper. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. Like, there's a bit of string holding them together. Like, whatever. Maybe this is when Paul W. Sanderson fell in love with his wife. He's like, oh my god, look at her wearing almost no clothes. Maybe this was the meet cute. But she gets out with a method that I'm not sure would work on a keycard reader, but whatever. Like, I'm no expert. I'll just go with it. But the end of this movie is her walking out into the street, and it's like, apocalyptic Raccoon City. There's just abandoned cars everywhere. She reaches into a cop car, pulls out a shotgun, cocks it, the camera pulls back, and we see that the city is completely in desolation. One detail here that they put in an Easter egg, but it doesn't really make that much sense to me, is that on one of the cop cars on the hood, the STARS logo's there. But I'm like, why does a regular squad car have a STARS logo on it? The whole point of the STARS is that, like, the Special Tactics and Rescue Squad, they're not regular cops.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like it felt like, oh, it's an Easter egg just to like pop the fans of the game, but without there being any weight behind it or making any sense whatsoever. So
I think the sad thing is, I could be wrong, but I feel like I saw this in theaters, and I remember, like, there's some stuff, kind of like you were saying before, like you watch this a couple of times, trying to convince yourself to like it, and I feel like I would do that too of certain movies where I'd be like, well, no, like I have to like it because it's this like franchise or this book or whatever. But I remember like pretty early on, like being like, oh, like this, I don't like this, like this is not what I want out of this game. But I do think like I did have hope with the ending and being like, well, I don't know, like they could make a sequel and the Nemesis could be in it and they're in Raccoon City, like I don't know, it could be good. And yeah, we know how that turned out.
Yeah it's kind of that hope that the next one might be what you want from it, and you know, when we get to Apocalypse, like, oh, I have so many thoughts. The problem is that ultimately these movies were never trying to be anything other than completely shallow action movies, which is a shame, because obviously we're doing a horror movie podcast because, you know, it is a horror franchise, it is zombies, they should be somewhat horror movies. Obviously that varies from movie to movie a bit, but like, yeah, like it's like this franchise is so obsessed with being cool. And not only that, it's obsessed with being cool with a character called Alice, who's not from the games, but at every single turn they're going to say, hey, she's the coolest shit ever and she's way better than any of the characters in the games, which is frustrating as someone who likes the games and does not care for this character. Which it would be a different, you know, like there is a world where this was just a good movie, right? That didn't have the characters from the games, but it kind of like was good in its own right, and it made people fans of Alice. And then maybe there would be an argument of like, okay, well, it's kind of weird, but like she kind of is this cool character from a good movie, so you know, we'll just sort of say that that's the movie version of Resident Evil. But this is not a good movie, and this character is paper thin. There's nothing interesting about her. If I remember. So like I never read it myself, but someone like got an excerpt from the script for the second movie, which Paul Anderson didn't direct. He doesn't direct 2 and 3, but he wrote the scripts for them, I think. Okay. And in the script for 2, there's a moment where she first kind of shows up in the movie, and it basically said something to the effect of, "Oh, this will give the crowd a chance to cheer because their hero Alice has like swooped in to save the day," or something like that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? No one feels this strongly for Alice. She's a nothing character. I mean, everyone in this movie is a nothing character. None of them are memorable. None of them have anything going for them that makes them unique or makes them engaging or makes you care about them. They're completely flat. And it's the not. I mean, there's a lot of problems with the movie, both independently and as an adaptation. But if I was to say what the number one problem is that the characters are just nothing, and that's problem number one of many, but problem number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, would you say that Milla Jovovich is like? Would you consider her a good actor? I don't know, because I didn't think she was good in this movie, but again, it might just be because I just have so little affection or care about the character that I mean, yeah.
I think either way, she doesn't really get enough in this movie to do to like show any kind of like proper acting chops. Like I liked her in Fifth Element, but you know, again, that's a very kind of quirky role where she's not saying a lot of dialogue or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've ever seen her in something where I've went, oh, that she was great in that, because you know she's in a lot of crappy movies. I mean, she's in a lot of Paul W.S. Anderson movies, which is kind of why. But yeah, I don't like most of the things she's in, so it leaves me in a place where I just kind of feel ambivalent towards her as an actress more than anything.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really blame her for Alice sucking. It's not really her fault.
Yeah, not her fault, no.
But it's, I don't know.
Yeah, like, I'm curious. I mean, again, it'd be like a very different movie or something, but I'm trying to think, like, could she have possibly been Jill in a different movie or something? Like, I wonder if that would have worked.
I mean, she's not really what I think of when I think of Jill, but like, you know, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that she couldn't be, but she would be my first pick, certainly. Not that I've got someone in mind, admittedly, but
well, I know you've been trying to float the idea of a reboot starring Sydney Sweeney to Hollywood for a bit.
I don't know if she strikes me as a Jill either. I don't know who strikes me as a Jill, but I don't know who Sydney Sweeney would play. I don't know if there's any characters that Sydney Sweeney fits in Resident Evil.
Rebecca.
Nah.
Lisa Trevor.
Lisa Trevor. I mean, oh yeah, it's a lot of makeup, so I suppose technically anyone could play that role. Now Rebecca, you got to have like a a small petite person, right? That's the whole point of Rebecca. She's like the young naive one. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever. We're not going to sit and fan cast our own Resident Evil movies here. Come on.
No, we'll save that for even more screams.
Yeah, maybe we'll do an even more
That'll
screams.
be an episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't have much more to add. I find this just like the focus is in the wrong places. The zombies just always being hordes feels like too generic, I guess. Like I know people are going to say, but zombies are hordes in a lot of zombie movies. I'm like, well, yeah, but part of what makes Resident Evil the games feel different is that they don't tend to be like that. Now, admittedly, part of that was a technical limitation, but even once they could have a lot more zombies, it tended to still be relatively limited and more about the obstacles they create. So having just the hordes all the time just make it feel more like a normal zombie movie, and having like one bite turning you into a zombie, again, is just a generic zombie movie trope as opposed to how it works in Resident Evil necessarily. So it feels like a lot of things were just, we'll just do this because other zombie movies do them rather than because Resident Evil does them. So that's one of the things that kind of irks me about it as well. But then
it would have been great.
All the AI stuff and all that. Yeah, I only go with time.
Yeah. It just would have been great if someone did get bit and they're like, oh, wait, hold on, I got a first aid spray. And they just like sprayed in their arm.
Yeah. Oh, well. Tim, what are you rating Resident Evil?
I mean, it's a little tough because I'm going to go pretty low, but part of me...
Hey, Tim, we got 5 movies of lower to go, so maybe...
Well, that's what that like. Is that fair though? Like, can you justify that in a rating to be like, all right, I'm giving this a little bit of a bump just because I know the other movies are going to be so much lower?
Well, no, I'm just trying to keep the perspective in mind. Like, try and think of what the scale is, and like there has to be some room to go low because there's definitely worse.
No, right. I don't know. I mean, it's like I'm waffling between like a 3 and a 3.5, so it's like it's not good. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll go just the tad bit above with a 3.5, just because maybe there's a few things here and there that I'm like, maybe that would have been okay in a different movie or something, or maybe it's at least a little bit more watchable than what I know some of the other ones are gonna be, but. Yeah, I guess 3.5, which is honestly maybe even too much, but I don't know. It's not good. There's very little, in it that I don't know. I just don't understand how this became like such a popular, like long running franchise.
I don't think it's. I think there's some sort of tax break scheme going on with these movies. I can't believe this is popular enough for 5 more of these bloody things. Like, I feel like no one ever liked them.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like there was probably like a cult fan base or something, but I don't think I've ever like run into anyone in real life that has actually enjoyed them.
No, I have not.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sad because it is just so off the mark. And again, like if it was something that like at least maybe was like more outrageously bad in a cheesy fun way, at least there would be something redeeming about that, where it's like, okay, this isn't what I want out of a Resident Evil movie, but it's so like overly bad that I'm laughing at it, or something like I don't know, another video game adaptation, the Super Mario Brothers movie from the 90s, like,
much better than this.
Yeah, and it's like, obviously that it like goes in like wild directions, and it's probably not what anyone really wants from like a Mario movie, but I do find it like a fascinating kind of oddity because it is so different and strange and trying to do stuff. And
not Super Mario Odyssey, Super Mario's Odyssey.
Yeah. But yeah, like at least that is bad, but in ways I think are kind of funny, and I could see that watching with someone and laughing at it. But this is bad in all the ways that just make it a tough watch. It especially feels like I didn't like this kind of stuff at the time, but watching it now, it especially feels dated with like the look and the CGI and all the stuff. So yeah, it sucks, and it hurts. But hey, at least it feels good to vent and complain about it. Like, I would never want to watch these just on my own for no reason, but if there's a reason to watch it, at least it's you can get something out by just kind of complaining about it with a friend.
Yeah, a lot of therapeutic potential over the course of this franchise. Yeah, I mean, I'm going a little bit higher. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10, just because I feel like it is at least focused. It's not as... Because the sequels, I know they're going to get way more haphazard and way more just absurd with their characters and the superpowers and just how messy they are in terms of plot and setting and everything else. For all its faults, this at least is a focused film about characters with a goal, even though sometimes there's parts of it that don't make that much sense. And they get trapped in a location with zombies, which somehow, out of the 6 of them, makes it feel more like a Resident Evil movie than any of the other ones do. And that is a damning statement, given how much I don't think this feels like a Resident Evil movie. But it's closer than a lot of the others, barring the fact that the others have more recognizable monsters, or in some cases some characters, at least in name, not so much in spirit for the most part. Like I don't think the Claire Redfield we get later on feels like Claire Redfield. The Chris isn't a good Chris. The Barry's not a good Barry. There's even a Leon at one point. Like it's a whole mess. So
from what I remember, and maybe this doesn't apply to all the characters, but I think I remember like some of the sequels, it's like, yeah, the characters don't feel like the characters at all, but like they do feel like they went to the trouble to like try to dress them like it. So it just seems like bad
cosplay,
like, fan film, cosplay characters.
Yeah. Not all of them. Like I want to say they never even tried with Claire. Claire never even is dressed like Claire. The others, though, I do think get their outfits more or less. There's even an edit one. I mean, I think pretty much all the major characters have appeared by the time we get to the 5th movie. Yeah. But hey, all right. Well, that's our thoughts on the Resident Evil movie. We have to wrap it up somewhere, and at this point, I feel like we're just going to go in circles with moaning about it. So I think this is a good place to leave off. Like I said at the start, you can get an exclusive episode of the show every month over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Plus at the $5 tier and up, we do even more stream segments, and that's just like random different horror movie discussion topics. Sometimes it'll be like a weird little top 5 or something like that. But you can check out all of that over at Patreon. There's bonuses for the other shows we do in Mail Fuzz Movies as well. So go check out that. I wouldn't be able to do this as consistently as I do, and as many shows as I do, without the support on Patreon or via YouTube memberships or whatever else. So thank you to everyone who does support. And obviously, just watching, liking, subscribing, all these things help too. So please do that too. Next time on the show, we have another newer release, which is a movie called Stop Motion, which I think's had some buzz.
I've heard good things.
Okay, yeah, we'll see. I'm curious. So we'll get to that. Just FYI, this doesn't really impact anyone, but we're taking like 3 weeks off from recording. We've gotten ahead because Tim's got stuff coming up. So in theory, we'll just be back next week like normal. But yeah, I was letting people know this is like, for us, there's a big gap in between these 2 episodes.
Yeah, people should be thankful because I had a very busy month, but I did make sure to cover the episodes while I'm gone. So.
Yeah, at least you get a rest after Resident Evil.
Oh yeah, ooh, that'd be nice.
Oh, that was nice timing. So that is the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.